So today, I've got a handling mod for you guys, and it's something I've been waiting to do for a long time. We're going to be polybushing the front lower control arms on my ST. Now, as you can see, and probably hear, the weather out today is horrible, but luckily for me, the first part of this video is going to be inside. And that's because I've picked up another set of lower control arms ahead of time so I can get the polybushes in, and then it's just a simple old ones out, new ones in kind of job when we actually come to fit them. As well as the polybushes, I've also picked up another set of ball joints to go on the end of the control arms, and I've also decided that while I'm in there, I might as well change out the drop links, the inner tie rods, and put some new track rod ends on as well, just as sort of preventative maintenance. And another reason I picked up another set of control arms is just because I know the ones in the car are horrible, they're all rusty, so I didn't want to fit those back into the car along with all the fresh new parts. So these are actually supplied to me by Joe Linden, who I got the rear anti-roll bar from. So thanks, Joe, for that. And I've also had some help from another subscriber with these. So a massive thanks to Swifty RS, who managed to get these sandblasted for me. Now, he actually took these down to a place local to us that does powder coating. So that is PSG Coatings in Welshpool. So if you guys are in the area and you're looking for any sort of work done, then definitely go and check them out. So a massive thanks to Roger for sorting these out for me. And he's also hooked me up with a few more parts that you're going to see in some future videos. But for now, it's time to crack on with painting these things and fitting the new polybushes as well. Now, I know you guys are probably just going to say that I should have got these powder coated while they were being sandblasted, but if I'm honest, they're probably just going to get battered anyway. I know powder coat would be a lot more durable, but there was a particular colour that I wanted to go with these, somewhat quite specific, so I just wanted them cleaned up so I could paint them myself. I think I'm actually going to fit the polybushes first and then just mask them off and paint them, because I don't want to damage the paint trying to press out the old bushes and then press in the new ones. Now, just quickly, before we crack on, I just want to touch on the bushes that I've actually bought for this. So you'll know that we fitted Powerflex rear axle bushes, and Powerflex are pretty much the brand that you go for when we talk polybushes. But for the front lower control arms, I've actually gone with a different brand. I've gone for Flo-Flex. Now, at first glance, these bushes don't actually look too bad, but I've heard mixed reviews about them online. Not so much that they're particularly bad quality, but more that the company's quality control isn't that good. It's kind of hit and miss with whether or not you get a good set or a bad set, but these do look pretty good, so we'll have to fit them and just see what they're like. The reason I went with them is just because, like, people do say a lot of bad stuff about them and just say you should definitely go for Powerflex, like there's no other option, but I just thought I'd try them out. I guess you could say that I'm doing this so you don't have to. And I think they actually work out about half the price of a Powerflex set. So if they go okay, then you'll definitely save yourself a bit of money if you want to go for these as well. But we're not going to know until they're fitted, and before we can fit them, we need to remove the old bushes. So that's what I'm going to do first. So I started off by trying to drill out the rubber all the way around the bush. But after making very little progress in quite a long length of time, and snapping many drill bits, I decided to try a new tactic. I cut away the outer lip with a hacksaw and was then just able to hammer out the bush all the way through until it just popped out the other side. Now, I can't believe that actually worked, but I'm really happy that it did. But before I went any further, I just decided to test fit the bushes in here, and despite what I've heard online, they actually fit really well. So I decided that I was just going to paint the control arms and then just fit the bushes afterwards. Now, I don't know what possessed me to try the drill method again after the hassle I had with the first bush, but after just a few minutes, I suddenly remembered I've got a 12-ton press, so I just pressed the other bush off the lower control arm. Now, the larger bush has an inner and an outer race, so these just need to be cut, and then the rest of the bushing can just be pressed out. So this outer race is still stuck in this aluminium piece you see here, and the inner race is stuck on the end of the lower control arm, so these both need to be cut. So I got busy with the hacksaw, being careful not to cut the aluminium housing, and then just used a hammer and a chisel to knock out the outer race. Okay, so that's that piece out, and it wasn't really that hard. But the piece I'm worried about is what I mentioned a few minutes ago, and it's this. Now, I'm hoping it is just plastic, but I'm not really sure. So we're going to try and cut this off next. So it turned out it was metal, and I wanted to be really careful not to cut the lower control arm once again. So I started out with just using the Dremel, but this just wasn't cutting it. No pun intended, so I had to move on to the angle grinder. But then I did have to revert back to the Dremel just for this last little piece, and then once I cut all the way through, I could prise this race off the lower control arm and remove it. Okay, so we're getting there. We're nearly done with stripping this first lower control arm, but there's one more thing I need to do before I can paint it, and that's sort out this lower ball joint, because this one has seen much better days. It's all ripped and torn, so we're gonna have to get rid of this. Now, originally these are riveted in, but the ones that I've bought, they just screw through here. So if we can drill these rivets out, we can just slide this ball joint and like the little arm it sits on out of the lower control arm, and then we can just slide the new one in and bolt that in place. But I'll probably bolt the new one in once we've painted these. Now, despite how it's going to come across in the video, this was not a quick job. To drill out just the three on the first lower control arm took me multiple hours. I don't know what these rivets were made of, but they blunted pretty much every single bit that was in a brand new pack of drill bits, and I didn't even cheap out on the drill bits. I got decent ones. But yeah, this just took so long to drill just 3 rivets out. So if you guys are wanting to do this, like, it is not a quick job. So definitely think about getting a second set of control arms so you can do what I did and do it off the car and then just take the old ones out and fit the new ones in. But eventually I did manage to get through them, and then it was just a case of knocking the old rivets out, and then the ball joint can be removed from the control arm. Okay, so that's the first one done. Both bushes are out and the ball joint is out. So I just quickly need to do the next one, and then we can go and paint both bottom arms. Okay, so these are finally finished. The ball joints are out, all the bushes are out, and they're ready for paint. So I'm just going to go ahead and give these a quick clean. But before I do that, I'm going to head down to my parents so I can paint in their garage. Now, I've shown you a hell of a lot of painting lately, and there's not really anything new to show you, so I'm going to go ahead and get those done, and then I'll catch up with you once these are painted. And while I was waiting for the paint to dry, I went ahead and installed the larger bushes into the aluminium housings, which will just slide onto the lower control arms once we're ready to fit these back together. So I applied some silicone grease just so they went in nice and easily, and so there wouldn't be any squeaking once they're installed, and then used my press to press them into the housings. Right, okay, so it's a couple of days later, and the lower control arms are painted, and they are looking awesome. Now, I'm hoping to get these fitted this weekend, but as always, the weather here is terrible. And you guys in the comments have been asking quite a few times where the hell Ash is. So here he is. We're actually up in Ash's dad's garage, so we're going to get all the new bushes and ball joints fitted, get the lower control arms on, and then hopefully we'll take it for a drive tomorrow and see how they're doing. But first we need to get the original lower control arms off the car and all the other little bits like the track rods, the tie rods, the drop links and all that sort of stuff. So the car's in the air, the wheels are off, so we're going to get cracking and just get all that stuff removed. So first it was off with the track rod end, disconnected from the knuckle. Then I could remove the clips that hold on the rubber boot, covering the inner tie rod where it connects to the steering rack. Now this next bit's always a pain, loosening the retaining nut that holds the track rod end onto the inner tie rod. I did have to put the track rod end back into the knuckle briefly just to hold it in place while I loosened it. It did come away, but it did give me a bit of a problem later on. Now, although I was changing both parts, I still thought it was wise to count the number of turns to take the old track rod off and then put the new one back on the new inner tie rod with the same number of turns. 17 and a half. Right, okay, so we're having no luck actually trying to wind this nut off the inner tie rod so that we can get these clamps and the boot off. So we're just going to come off with the angle grinder. Not only was the retaining nut stopping us getting the rubber boot off, but it was also stopping me getting this special tool on there that you need to remove the inner tie rod from the steering rack. So I just used the tool on a long extension and it undid pretty easily. Then it was on with the new one. Slip the tool back over and nip that up. Then the rubber boot could go back on. Couldn't reuse the original clamp, so there's no shame in using the cable tie, but the smaller one we managed to use the clamp. Then the new retaining nut could go on, and then I wound on the new track rod end the same number of turns as it took to take the old one off. 17. Then I could wind the retaining nut back down to hold the track rod in place, pop the track rod back into the steering knuckle, and then tighten up the retaining nut. Next it was time to move on to the drop link, so I just buzzed off the nut on the top, came out nice and easily. The bottom one gave me a bit of grief though, and it was just spinning, so I gripped it with some mole grips on the back, and then it wound off no problem. Then once that was off, the new one went straight back on, and because these were brand new, luckily I was able to use a spanner and a little bit to hold it in place so that nothing spun, and I could just install them nice and easily. Then the top one went back in, along with the little bracket for the ABS line, and then that's all the steering components done. Right, okay, so that's the inner tie rod, the track rod end, and the drop link changed, so now we're moving on to the lower control arm. There's a pinch bolt that holds the lower control arm into the steering knuckle, which needs to be removed. I bought new pinch bolts for this, so I wasn't worried about damaging the threads hammering the old one out. I used a ball joint splitter to separate the bottom arm from the steering knuckle, and once it was free I could pry it the rest of the way out. Then I could undo the single bolt which holds the front of the lower control arm where the smaller bushing sits to the subframe. Then I could move on to the 3 bolts to hold the little aluminium piece which holds the larger bush at the back of the control arm. And then after a lot of wiggling, the lower control arm was finally free from the car. Ash was kind enough to install all the new Polybushes into the new control arms with plenty of silicone grease and install the new ball joints as well. I was really impressed with the Polybushes because whilst they slid on nice and easily once they were installed, they were really firm, so I'd say they were a perfect fit. Then the new lower control arm was ready to go into the car. Could install the rear bracket bolts and the front bolt as well. I installed the ball joint into the knuckle and torqued it down, and then torqued down the rear lower arm bracket bolts. The front control arm bolts get torqued down once the car is on the ground and the suspension's under load. So before we do that, let's see how Ash is getting on with the other side. And then with both sides done, the wheels can go back on, the car can be lowered down, and then I can torque up those front control arm bolts with a series of really long extensions. Okay, so it's the following day. I'm back at home. I got back here from Ash's at about 3 o'clock last night. It was a really late one, but we got the job done. Now, just driving this back, I can already tell that those Polybushes are making a hell of a difference to how this car is going to handle. But one thing was evident straight away, and that is that we desperately need a wheel alignment on this car. That's always going to be the case, really, when you're doing any work on the lower suspension. But yeah, we're going to go and get a wheel alignment, so that's where I'm going to head off now. Now, I didn't want to disturb the guys too much by sticking a camera in their face the whole time, but my good mate Rob and his stepdad Mark were happy for me to jump under and take a look. Now, as expected, the tracking was well out, but the guys got the driver's side adjusted nice and easily. The passenger side, though, gave us a few problems. It's as if the new inner tie rod ball joint was so stiff that as they were trying to adjust the tracking, it was actually unwinding the inner tie rod from the steering rack. But luckily, we were able to wind it back in and get a big spanner in there to nip it back up. We got it sorted, though. Cheers, guys. Okay, so we're back from getting a wheel alignment and the car is feeling so much better, but I just wanted to say a massive thank you to BTS in Adver. Now, I'm going to leave a link in the description to their website and their Facebook page because even though they're a little bit out of the way, even for me, compared to a couple of other tyre places around here, they are one of the only places local to me and in the sort of surrounding area that you can find on black circles. If you guys don't know what that is, just really quickly, if you don't just want to go to like your local tyre shop and just stick on whatever you've got in stock, if you want to pick the specific tyres that you want, you can order them online at black circles and then you can get them fitted at an approved garage like the garage in Adver that I went to, BTS, to get my tracking done. So next time I need tyres, which I do need for this car soon on the rear, I'll definitely be going to them and getting my tyres delivered via Black Circle. So definitely go and check them out if you're in the area or you're local to me and you want decent tyres or just generally good service. Go and check them out. But with BTS being a little bit further away from me, it gave me a really good opportunity to really test out the new Polybushes on the way home. And what can I say? They have made such a difference to the way this car handles. But granted, that could be down to some of the new steering and suspension components we fitted, like the new ball joints, the new track rods, inner tie rods, the new drop links and all that stuff. But generally, the car just does feel so much firmer at the front. It is a little bit of a more harsh ride than it was with the standard bushes, as you'd expect. But I definitely don't think it's unbearable. Now, obviously, if you were going to go for like Powerflex, they do different variations. So you can have the sort of more road happy, the yellow bushes, I think. And then you can go to the more sort of race spec ones is the black series, I think, with Powerflex. Like these, the Floflex ones, they just tend to do one type. So there's no sort of track oriented version or, you know, a more road friendly version. It's just the one. But that's what I went for. And really, I can't see any problem with them. I think they're really good. Like I said, it's not unbearable, but it is a lot firmer. Everything feels a lot more direct. Like the steering feels a lot better. I really rate these bushes, you know. And for the price point as well, like I said earlier in the video, I think they're around half the price of the same set from Powerflex. So definitely, if you're in the market for Polybushes and you're on a bit of a budget, then I would highly suggest that you consider checking out Floflex and maybe getting a set for your car. They were really easy to install. They also look really well made as well. Like I have seen other sets from other brands that I'm not going to mention, but the quality on them that I've seen has just been terrible, but the quality of these Floflex ones, like just looking at them, they looked really well made. So I don't really know where all that other sort of stuff that I've heard about them has come from, but maybe they've just improved a lot since I think a lot of the stuff I've seen was quite dated, to be fair, so maybe they've just gotten a lot better. And I would say that based on my experience with these bushes, that they're up there with some of the more premium brands of polybushes that you can get. The only downside for me was the colour, but if that's all I've got to complain about, then I don't think I've gone too far wrong, and I'm super happy with these bushes. But I am by no means an expert, so if you guys have had any experience with these bushes, then I'd definitely like to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Have you had Floflex front suspension bushes, rear axle bushes, any of the other bushes that they make for these cars, or any other car as well? Because like I've said, my experiences personally with them have been really good. For me, Floflex, definitely a great brand, so definitely consider getting a set for yourself. Anyway, this video has gone on long enough, so as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.